15 years ago, Lady Gaga released The Fame Monster, what many, including myself, consider to be one of the greatest pop albums of all time. This record initially started as a deluxe edition reissue of her iconic debut, The Fame, but evolved into her second record and an exploration of the dark side of fame. Running at under 35 minutes at just 8 tracks, this electro-pop album is a dark pop bible that truly cemented Lady Gaga as a revolutionary and a voice in the genre. Its 3 singles all hit the top 10 with their own iconic music videos and even sparked controversy and conversation. This album came out at a time where pop music was water cooler talk that even the least pop culture savvy folk would talk about. Gaga dominated much of that conversation in 2009 and 2010 with The Fame Monster. This record was everywhere, and it actually garnered Gaga the most nominations of all of her works, getting 6 nominations in 6 different categories, including Album of the Year, but ultimately winning Best Pop Vocal Album and 2 different awards for Bad Romance, which is considered one of the best pop songs in the history of the genre. This video essay is a remaster of my previous video on this record, which I felt did not do the record justice, as I was in a rush to cover all the albums before Chromatica. In this video, I'm going to discuss the era, iconic moments, its themes, and do my track-by-track review and give it a score. Spoilers, guys, this is a 10 out of 10 knockout. Conceiving The Fame Monster, Lady Gaga's debut, The Fame dropped in 2008, and with it, 4 of the biggest hits of the 2000s, spawning 2 number ones, with all 4 of these songs hitting the top 10. Gaga was powerful enough to get a song on the radio with the lyrics "Disco Stick" to number 5. The Fame was an exploration of love, sex, money, power, and identity with a 80s sheen to it. It not only creeped up the charts to a peak of number 2 from a modest debut months after its release, The Fame really did end up scoring Gaga 5 nominations, including Album of the Year, where it won Best Electronic and Dance Album, as well as Best Dance Record for Poker Face. It is undeniably one of the greatest debut albums in eras of the modern pop age. Interscope wanted to capitalize with the re-release, a strategy that was very popular at the time, but Gaga felt like it was just artists sneaking singles onto an already finished piece of work. Rather than just do 3 songs like the label wanted, Gaga had conceived a grander vision, the yin to The Fame's yang, The Fame Monster. As early as March 2009, Gaga had been working on what would eventually become the song Monster. Obsessed with horror films and the idea of celebrity decay and how fame itself was a societal monster, she dreamed up her next record. Gaga would draw on experiences from her time doing the Fame Ball tour, seeing her biggest fears come to life. Each track on the Fame Monster would symbolize different beasts, like the fear of sex monster, the fear of love monster, and so forth. Gaga would also lean deeper into the Europop influences that were already there in The Fame, going into more gothic and industrial territory. One of the key themes of this record was discussing the victims of fame, especially in Dance in the Dark. We see her list people who met a tragic end: Marilyn Monroe, Judy Garland, Sylvia Plath, Princess Di, Liberace, and John Benet Ramsey. Gaga approaches this album as a forewarning to herself about not letting fame get her the same way that it got these people. We can really see that through the different visuals of the record. Gaga collected a world-class set of producers, but half of the album was produced by Red One, with Gaga co-producing and co-writing every track on this record. Ron Fair, Tal Harsberg, Fernando Garibay, Darkchild, Space Cowboy, and Teddy Riley would round out the producers. This record contains just one collaboration with the legendary Beyonce Knowles on Telephone, a track initially written for Britney Spears, who had selected Quicksand, a Garibay and Gaga track as a bonus track for her European iTunes edition of Circus. I personally consider Gaga's iconic performance at the 2009 VMAs for Paparazzi in September to be the kickoff of The Fame Monster. Thematically, it introduced the darker edge to the Fame aesthetic, and the outfit that she wore when accepting awards later that night, the red crown veil, was a teaser to later looks. That same night, Kanye West infamously did his "I'ma Let You Finish" Taylor thing, which played a part in killing a planned tour that Gaga and Ye had together called Fame Kills, which would have seen the two co-headline and would have supported 808 Heartbreaks and The Fame Monster. The lead single to The Fame Monster, Bad Romance, leaked in full in early October. I still remember the tags and Red One's vocals. Gaga would comment that this was not the final version on Twitter and went on SNL the night after to perform a part of the song. The final track would debut at close friend Alexander McQueen's final Paris Fashion Week show shortly before his passing. Representing the love monster, the track went on to top charts around the world, but only peaked at number 2 in the States. It went 11 times platinum and won a Grammy for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. Many cite it as one of the greatest songs of all time. The American Psychology Association calls it the catchiest song in the world. Its music video was directed by eventual Hunger Games director Francis Lawrence and sees Gaga being kidnapped and trafficked by the Russian mafia before burning her captor alive. For a time, it was actually the most viewed video on YouTube, and it won 7 VMAs as well as a Grammy for its music video. Bad Romance is still one of Gaga's seminal songs and a staple on her setlist, likely until she retires. The album covers remain some of the best in the modern age. Both were shot by Hedy Slimane, the first being Gaga in this blonde, angular wig with a sick black coat, which just covers half of her face. It feels like a direct reference to the Fame, but now that her eyes are visible, but her mouth has been obscured to show her being silenced. The other, which I adore, and Gaga had actually wanted to be the standard cover of this album, is her before Fame. This is Stephanie, this gothic take on herself in tears before becoming Gaga. It's arresting and one of my favorite visuals of Gaga even 15 years later. Before I talk about its release, I want to bring up that Gaga had to actually fight Interscope to release this album as a standalone record rather than just a reissue. Interscope meant to drop it exclusively on just 2 CDs, including the Fame, but she believed artistically it stood on its own, and that it would be unfair for some fans to have to buy the record again. It was released as a standard EP because of that, and for historical context, this was during a recession. We love a consumer-conscious queen. Now I'm just going to talk about the Fame Monster era. Gaga was just about everywhere when this album launched. She even performed Bad Romance just 1 week before the album's drop on Gossip Girl. This album first dropped on November 18th in Italy and Japan, but was launched stateside on the 23rd. It was reviewed and received positively by critics, some of whom just did not see this as a big leap at the time, but others saw it as its own piece of art. Enemy called it the moment that she cemented herself as a real star, though it would be deemed one of the best albums of the past 30 years by Spin, who called it Gaga's magnum opus record. Despite it being dropped in 2009, it was actually included on Pitchfork's Best Albums of the 2010s because of its impact. We see that impact today in the new crop of pop girls, particularly Chappell Roan, whose drag queen-inspired fashion and sound really evokes early Gaga spirit. Commercially, it debuted at number 5 in the States, selling 174,000 copies. Due to bundling, the Fame actually jumped to number 6, selling 151,000 units that week. She even replaced herself atop the dance and electronics charts. Both the Fame and the Fame Monster are credited for the revival of EDM in the late 2000s era of pop. Her avant-garde fashion just inspired peers to raise the bar on their music and their own style. A special edition of this record came with a lock of Gaga's hair. It is a coveted collector's item. Another cool variant was a USB drive, which came with the explicit version of the albums, along with music videos, cover arts, and more. Interestingly enough, the explicit version of this album was exclusive to these unique physicals and the streaming versions. My copy from 2009 is still censored, despite having the sticker. The second single, Telephone, launched in January and hit number 1 in the UK and number 3 in the States. It was her 6th consecutive top 10 hit. The music video is truly one of the best in modern history, a sequel to her Paparazzi music video, seeing Beyoncé play Honeybee, a fellow criminal who bails Gaga out of jail, in the Kill Bill pussy wagon before killing a diner of patrons, including her cheating boyfriend played by movie star Tyrese Gibson. This was shot in just 2 days on film and it was adored critically and culturally. I remember coming to school the next day, everyone was talking about it, teachers, students. It unintentionally won the world record for most product placement in a music video by homaging Andy Warhol. Academics cite it as a subversive slant on feminist art, others would call it a homage to Lesploitation B films of the past, and some consider it a condemnation of celebrity culture, spectacle, and fame. It was a watershed moment for music videos at the start of the 2010s. To this day, Gaga and B have not performed this song together, but the day that they do, the internet and her story will be made. Gaga and her label had disagreements over single 3. Interscope actually wanted Dance in the Dark to be the third single, but Gaga pushed for Alejandro. She got what she wanted when it dropped in April, and it went on to hit the top 5 in the States, her 7th straight top 10 smash. The track was favorably compared to ABBA and Ace of Base's old hits, and it is considered one of her best tracks in retrospect, a mix of Latin pop and synth pop. It bids her farewell to a lover. The music video, directed by Stephen Klein, was a tribute to the gay community and her admiration for gay love. It sees her dance with male soldiers and be a nun who swallows a rosary at one point. Some saw it as her criticism of Don't Ask, Don't Tell at the time. Inspired by the musical Cabaret, we see Gaga tribute Bob Fosse and nod Liza Minnelli's look in that film. One iconic part is Gaga in a machine gun bra. She homages Joan of Arc. It's just this dark, really showcase of Gaga's world-building ability. A lot of critics loved it for being ballsy, though some felt like it did not match the previous visuals and aesthetics in terms of value. That being said, I do feel like the backlash against this video from religious groups like the Catholic Church began waves of dissent that would eventually sink the art pop era. Her contemporary at the time, Katy Perry, would actually tweet shady comments about it being blasphemy for entertainment. She would go on to slay a nun. To support the record, Gaga embarked on the Monster Ball Tour, her first ever arena and stadium-sized tour, and the highest-grossing tour for a debut headliner in history. It was the first ever electro-pop opera, and it started just 4 days after the album's launch, spurred by the cancellation of the Fame Kills tour. Gaga would go on to reconfigure the tour months into the show because she felt like it had been rushed. The storyline eventually became New York-themed, with Gaga and company lost in the city on their way to the Monster Ball, and was eventually immortalized through an HBO special that covered the Madison Square Garden show. Critics really loved the revamped version of the show, calling it an ambitious odyssey and a wonderful showcase of Gaga's vision and voice. Despite being a success, Gaga said that the initial version of the tour had actually nearly bankrupted her at one point. She had actually been touring this record up to 2011, where she even added Born This Way to the encore of shows. Speaking of which, Born This Way had been teased after she took home Video of the Year at the VMAs in 2010 for Bad Romance. I more or less consider the album's victory at the Grammys for Best Pop Vocal Album as the end of a remarkable era of her career. Now I'm just going to talk about some general album thoughts. I still consider The Fame Monster to be Gaga's masterwork. It's a very eclectic but tight 8-track record that really speaks to the core of her artistic vision. Each track deserves a placement on a record. I found myself just as in love with the deep cuts as the singles, and argue that almost all of these tracks could have smashed on the charts. You can really see the range that she has on here. You have those killer dance tracks, those wonky dark explorations, and a tender piano rock ballad that really hinted at her success with A Star Is Born years down the line. Despite initially being seen as an EP, Gaga has considered this her second album, as does the Academy when they nominated it for its highest honor. Gaga has always said that this was the first album that she wrote about her own life. The Fame had been about what she imagined success in life would be like. It's this really highly idealized record that occasionally flirts with darker themes. While I adore it, it had been scattershot, whereas The Fame Monster really sticks to the core conceit of facing your demons. We see Gaga contemplate the realities of romance, potential loss, and addiction on here. It's crazy to imagine that Gaga was just 23 years old when she was doing all of this. She really is a wunderkind, blending together her love of art and culture here. Her hands-on approach with the production really pays off. Each track really sounds unique, but it's not quite cohesive. The mantra of free bitch throughout the record, I felt, really ties together what Gaga sought most in this period. She wanted to ensure that she was still free artistically and herself, and you see that in the cover art, how she actively fought and won against her record label on many decisions, including the music itself. If I had to sum up The Fame Monster, it was a battle for her own soul that we got to see play out in real time, and it was one that she clearly won and allowed her to go on to make artistic risk like Born This Way, which was an imperial era for herself and an extension of this album's success, as well as art pop, which was a brave implosion of that success. Recently, she dove back into the sounds of this record, and Born This Way on Seas, the the lead single to LG7, which seems to be a return to this kind of Gaga. While it may have not had the same commercial boon that this record and its ancestor Bad Romance had, it's an interesting to see Gaga revisit these visual and thematic motifs 15 years later. And now it's time for my track by track. Bad Romance covers the fear of love monster. You can really feel the Eastern European influence throughout. German techno and house beats via Red One really give this a Frankenstein vibe. During her tours, she always gave the song a little bit of a rock edge. The lyrics and Gaga's comments speak to it about being in love with your best friend, layering another level of tragedy. From the intro, there's a grand sense of wonder, that iconic refrain of ra ah 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 roma roma ma, that she said that that's her trying to sound out the word romance. Gaga ooh la la hints at the French verses later, and the name check, she knew she was going to be an icon. I personally love both of the verses. They speak to Gaga's desire. She wants the ugly, she wants the disease, she wants everything as long as it's free, drama, touch of their hand, and so forth. She wants everything. The references to Psycho and Vertigo and Rear Window speak to her love for Hitchcock and film. The chorus itself is a masterwork as she explodes over the track, sounding confident yet vulnerable. There's lust and fear in the you and me could write a bad romance. The interlude before the bridge is a walkway moment and a rare breathing moment throughout the record. And then we get one of the best bridges of all time. When she goes into French, the song just feels right. The soaring and the desperate I don't want to be friends before that final chorus. This is pop perfection. Truly one of the finest songs of all time. Alejandro represents the men monster. The opening violin directly samples Vittorio Monti as she speaks to Alejandro about why she cannot be with him before the pop melody takes over. I love the storytelling structure of the song. There's a storyline where you get a sense of her relationship to this man or these men. One of my friends who blew my mind many years ago when they told me they thought that the changing names in the chorus was actually her trying to show she's over Alejandro by changing the names to make it seem like she had forgotten him, but she clearly has not forgotten him. Verse 2, where she talks about how her boyfriend's just like her dad, it ties into another track later on, Speechless. Don't want to kiss, don't want to touch, just smoke my cigarette, hush. Very strong line because she needs distance. Kissing and touching and talking imply more. I always considered Monster to be the title track of the record. It is the sex monster and probably one of the deepest, catchiest cuts of her career. Red One's simple production evokes classic pop staple sounds. The siren-like beeping synth is just hypnotic. The spoken parts of the intro talk about seeing a man with a big dick. Let's be honest, that's what she's talking about before she goes into that killer post-chorus of he ate my heart. The stretching of the eights continues something that she did in Bad Romance of trying to enunciate. Like Alejandro, she takes time to tell a story, comparing this bad boy to a wolf and a beast in both verses. There's also like a vampire feel to it. The pre-chorus itself is an earworm and kind of like a melody switch when she's telling the story. Her girlfriend saying that we might have fucked, not really sure, don't quite recall, is such a great line. And the bridge, Gaga just playing into the melody and ultimately succumbing to him eating her heart and her brain. It's just so tragic, and the ad-libs at the end just peak Gaga. Speechless is personally one of my favorite deep cuts of her entire career, truly the backbone for her jazz career and her whole A Star Is Born project. This track is an elegant piano-driven ballad about her father who had heart surgery. He told her that he was just ready to die, so she made this song as they drank at a piano. The label loved this track so much that they sent Ron Fair to go do it with her. It became the Deaf Monster track. I think that it's just so good. The pre-choruses are amazing. The shift from Could We Fix You If You Broke to Raise a Glass to Mend All the Broken Hearts of All My Wrecked Up Friends. There's just this timelessness to it. It feels like a long lost piano standard, like it would be welcome in the Elton John sort of discography. The chorus is just heartbreaking. The bridge is among some of her best writing. You just feel desperation in the could you give it all ups, and the I'll never love again refrains. It's just surreal seeing her lean into this type of writing with both Joanne and A Star Is Born. Dance in the Dark is a Fernando Garibay produced slice of dark pop heaven. I can see why the label wanted it to be a single. It would have been a really good compliment to Bad Romance, dance without feeling too much like an imitation. The intro alone can hook people in. This track is about the self monster, which at face value, it's about a girl who's too afraid to leave a bad relationship because of insecurity, or perhaps even a metaphor for her love of fame, despite knowing that it's killing her. Either way, the song is just so compelling. The chorus is about being afraid of one's true self, the dark being a safety spot because Gaga doesn't want to be seen falling apart, and that bridge is a tribute to people who have fallen apart due to the media picking them apart. The last lines, "Together we dance in the dark," being a tribute to those legacies, particularly Princess Diana in that bridge, a career-long muse of hers, just amazing. Telephone remains the bar for me for blockbuster duets and pop. She and Beyonce just take the song about suffocation and they transform it into a dance floor carefree anthem about letting loose and forgetting about work and attention. The Britney sound is intentional because it was originally for Spears. I think Spears at one point was going to record the guest vocals, but then it's reworked stunningly. I think Dark Child's production has some texture and richness to it. The usage of the dialing noises and the way that the vocals are layered, it's truly magnificent. And that A repetition, it's catchy, but it's also an echo to AA, Nothing Else I Can Say. Where that song is about romantic apathy, this one's just about exhaustion. You can feel Gaga and Beyonce's annoyance on this one. Sometimes I feel like I live in Grand Central Station. That's my favorite standout line of the bridge. I feel like Beyonce's delivery is just so soulful, but so annoyed. I really wish these women would come together again to kind of close off the story, whether or not it's a live performance, which has still not been done to this day, especially knowing what they know now. So Happy I Could Die is another longtime favorite of mine, if not my personal favorite, non-single from the record. It's about alcoholism and vanity. The Red One Space Cowboy production has this very dreary feel to it that's anchored by that drum kick. Verse 1 sees Gaga fantasizing about a woman, quite possibly her ideal version. A lot of people forget she's bisexual. She is. The pre-chorus has her try to ground herself in reality before the chorus is her trying to convince herself that she's happy, but she's not. The vocalized post-chorus is truly one of my favorite parts. It's just haunting. It's a perfect club slow jam despite being about the horrors of overconsumption and drowning in your own regrets. The honesty of the record really shines throughout, but on here you seldom really see an artist this young admit with such candor that they have a problem. It feels real. Teeth is the finale of the record. It's produced by Teddy Riley. It's a very textured track that actually took quite a bit of time to grow on me. It was not my favorite when it came out, honestly. I'll be real with that. It's the Truth Monster song. I think it ties into Monster and the whole horror motif of the record while being innuendo for oral sex. Still, the idea of showing one's teeth and their true face, I think it's a very powerful one. It's very vampiric, much like the album's visual motifs, which would evolve further and born this way. I love the musical theater-like delivery on here. You can tell Gaga was having fun in the studio. As a closer, it's pretty effective, but this album could be shuffled in any real way and still make a lot of sense, which is something that speaks to how good this record is, but also the nature of the times. Overall, I could talk about this album for hours. I honestly could. I could really give you like a 3-hour lecture on this, but I am still holding so much space for the Fame Monster and finding power in it. I think even 15 years later, this record remains Gaga's magnum opus amongst a very diverse discography that has just jumped different genres. I am certain that one day she will top this record, but until then, this one is 10 out of 10 forever, just a pop classic. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning into the Fame Monster video, which I have promised you guys for months. Let me know below in the comments what your favorite track was, what your favorite performance or moment was, whether or not this is your favorite Gaga album. Like, I want to hear all of your thoughts. A quick shout out to my members. Thank you so much for supporting my channel and taking that extra step. And a shout out to my subscribers. Thank you, whether or not you just subscribed today or you were there back in 2018. It really means a lot to me. I've been doing this channel for quite some time. I've taken breaks, I've come back, but I always come back. I never thought like 15 years ago when this album came out, when I was just like a tiny little teenager in middle school or whatever like that, I would be talking about pop music to thousands of you. So thank you so much. And I hope to see you next video.